No be juju.
The African Mythology podcast you never knew you needed.
Vibes.
We're no mythologists, just two young Nigerians with a relatively recent interest in African mythology and storytelling. In each episode, we'll be recounting various myths and legends across the African continent, while drawing parallels between them as well as mass culture today. It's all vibes, not juju. Hello,
Hi
we're
guys.
back.
And we're shy.
Yeah, we
Long
are.
time no podcast episode.
Yes, yes. But we are back and we are better. We are still vibing, but maybe less, slightly less.
Slightly
More,
less vibing.
more education, more
More
information,
education.
more information. We're still gonna be vibing, but yeah. But anyways, how are you? How's life?
We're just laughing because we're talking about how I'm not a morning person.
Yeah.
We're having
Oh
to
my gosh.
the morning. But we always bring the vibes. And we're still
We
bringing the vibes
we
even in the
will.
morning.
We will. And
So
yes, we're grateful for you still being flexible enough and adaptable enough to, you know, and
yes,
agile enough to still bring those vibes.
yes,
So,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
that's the most important thing.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm good. I am. What is happening? I am. Yeah, I am a morning person, so I'm feeling energized. I'm feeling excited, and yeah, very, this episode in particular, doing the research and everything was really interesting, so
Yeah.
I'm excited to share some of the learnings with you all. That's the
Yeah.
vibe.
So yeah, it is a very interesting episode today. Um, but before we go in, any vibes? We will now do one vibe of the week each. I think we're getting a bit crazy before. Let's do
Oh
one
my
vibe of the
god,
week each.
last time we did like five, it
We had
was
too
like,
many
okay,
vibes.
it's too many
Maybe
vibes.
less vibes.
A few less, yeah, fewer vibes. I mean, it is very early in the morning, so I think we can definitely condense it. So I'll just kick it off. So my vibe of the week is actually a vibe of the month because it was a while since I watched the thing that I'm going to talk about. So it's a movie by Ava DuVernay, who directed like Selma, Origin. So the movie that I watched this month was Middle of Nowhere, and it's basically like a very emotional drama centered on the overlooked experiences of women supporting like their loved ones who are incarcerated and in
Mm.
prison. So it was really it was really a an incredible viewing experience because it basically followed a medical student who became a nurse and sacrificed her ambitions to go to medical school, to kind of keep her marriage to her
Mm.
husband who was sentenced to 8 years in prison. So yeah, it was
Oh wow.
a yeah, what I loved most about the story was the fact that it was like told from a lens that we don't normally see. Obviously she's like, this was like a black woman who was kind of trying to balance, love, ambition, loss, loyalty, and she was kind of sacrificing her own identity to keep this marriage and just the effect of that. And just, yeah, he explored a lot about self-discovery and the ripple effects of like uh, incarceration and having family members, loved ones that are imprisoned. And yeah, it's a film that has actually been on my watch list for several years, and it
Mm.
really exceeded my expectations because even though Yeah, I would say that there were even in that unique context, there were a lot of things that I think a lot of people can draw from. It was a very universal story, and universal message of like keeping your identity even in yeah, just staying true to yourself
Mm,
even in challenging situations, and loving yourself. And you can love someone, but you also have to love yourself too. And you know, put your needs should, be prioritized as well. And if you don't do that, it's just not great for everyone. So it was really, really strong,
mm.
powerful message. I recommend to everyone. Watch Middle of Nowhere, really good.
Oh, that's really good. Um,
What was yours, your vibe?
so to be fair, I think I was talking about this earlier. It's been a bit of a dry season for me
Yeah.
recently in terms of media, but mine is less, um, maybe less deep, more shallow than yours.
Well, that's all about the vibes.
Yeah,
It's
some
just
of my vibes.
it is what it is.
So mine's actually a dating show.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. It's this Korean dating show
Oh, all right.
called Eternal Singles, and I think it's actually one of the most like wholesome and still not boring dating
Hmm.
shows.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so they basically take these like groups of like singles who from different ages, all up to like I think usually between 20 and 30 years old, who haven't dated anybody ever or been in a relationship ever, and they have like mentors for them as well, and they have to sort of like go through a bit of a like boot camp type thing. So not boot camp, but like a sort of
Wow.
like a um basically trying to help them to improve their chances of getting into a relationship.
Mm.
And like I feel like if it was in forgive me, American fans, but if it was like an American show, um sometimes they focus too much on like appearance, so
Wow. Wow.
it would be like a lot of like how to change your clothes, makeup, and there was a bit of that because that was part of some people's
Yeah.
struggles,
Hmm.
but there was also like they were having therapy sessions like with like actual like psychologists. They were having tutors to, I think if they were having troubles with like communication, they would have
Yeah.
tutors for that as well,
Oh
teach
my
them how
God.
to like listen, because I think there were some of them that like there was one particular one who she struggled to listen to other people. She was always the one talking. So they like helped to
Okay.
like coach her to, learn how to listen and, improve her communication style. Yeah. Um so it was actually like some people had very deep things. Some people had been through abuse. Some people had, just I think some people were actually probably on the spectrum. Um so, they just helped them around that, and help them build their confidence. And then after they do all that, I'm not sure how long they do it for, but I think it's like a substantial time. They bring them into, it's probably similar to like a Love Island type thing where like they're all like in a particular um not a villa, but they have like they live there for a few, I think it's probably like 1 to 2 weeks. And they, try and find relationships within there. And yeah, it was just really good. It's very honest. you it feels like very authentic and real.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, I think I even cried at some point just because like of how intense it was. Um, but yeah, it was a really I recommend Eternal Singles. It's on Netflix.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Like, I feel like that's the ideal dating show setup, something that actually addresses, the issues. Because it's like, I'm actually watching Love is Blind at the moment, and
Mm,
Love is Blind UK, the second season. And a lot
mm,
of things, a lot of the singles they keep saying things like, oh, it's the apps, it's the apps, it's the apps. So everyone is kind of focusing on, the external factors as to why dating has been a bit of a struggle.
yeah,
But what I like about, from what I'm hearing from this, is, it's not just kind of lamenting those external factors, which are valid. Like, it is the streets are streeting out there,
mm-hmm,
but like, also, as an individual and in many things in life, it's so key focusing on what you can actually change, focusing on
yeah,
what's in your control. And it sounds like that's what's being done, in this show. So that sounds really interesting. i'm,
yeah.
I'm a big dating show person, so I'm definitely going to check that out. But my question is, after all that work, are any of the couples still together?
I actually don't. So I think I just recently finished it.
Yeah.
Um, so I actually don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if I would say if only two couples actually ended up coming out of the show.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but I feel like it was actually really wholesome because like even the ones that
Awesome.
didn't find people, they were like, oh, actually, I know that actually now I can do it, and I feel more confident, approaching people, or I feel like this has improved me, mentally and emotionally. So it was almost like even if they didn't find anybody, it was fine because now they feel more empowered to to do that.
That is truly, truly, that's really beautiful, actually. And, to be honest, the fact that the goal is not necessarily, that's actually a bigger goal. That's self love, self
Yeah.
acceptance, self empowerment. And I guess that's a really good thing that people can come off of that dating show and say, oh my God, this has improved my life. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times people come off the dating shows, they're traumatized. They're
Yep.
even worse than
Yep. Yep.
they feel even worse than they did when they came into the show. There's some of
Yeah.
them that, maybe in the contract you must get married, or you must, they're coming out divorced, like,
Yep.
and you're scarred,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
that sounds like a model that different people should be paying attention to. And yeah, I'm keen to see
Yeah.
how that evolves. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
It's really good. Recommend.
Recommend.
So, on to today's episode. We're talking about very small indie. No one ever heard about it before. Film called Sinners.
Oh my
Woohoo!
gosh. Woo. Yo,
Obviously, I was joking. It is definitely not a small indie.
very small, very small, very, no budget.
Just a cute little,
A
a
cute little fixer upper of a film.
with some upcoming actors, Michael B. Jordan, and
MBJ. MBJ all day, all day.
um,
Ryan Coogler.
Ryan Coogler.
Ryan Coogler. How many times have we mentioned his name? Three
Hmm.
times. Because
He never
because
misses.
he doesn't miss. He does not miss. He actually does not miss.
No.
Like, I don't understand. Like, you look at this man's trajectory, and it's just so focused, and it's just so impactful, and there's just so much growth. Everything he
Yep.
does, it just gets better and better and better. It's so inspiring, to see, and it's incredible. Obviously, Sinners came out, a few months ago, but nobody can deny it's one of the standout films of this year.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, for those who may not know Ryan, he obviously directed Black Panther, which was a huge cultural phenomenon. Creed,
Yeah, I was gonna
the
say.
Creed
I'm pretty sure he
movies.
did Creed. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's done it again. Sinners, people knew it would be like a good film. Probably a great film, but nobody knew how great like it would
Yeah.
be. And obviously, this is No Be Juju, the African Mythology podcast. So, what kind of African mythology podcast would we be if we didn't talk about this? Can we really say we cover pop culture and mythology without acknowledging this film and its incredible impact?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it really, it really paid honor to a lot of, African ancestry, African
Yeah.
mythology,
Yeah.
and just African culture in general, and
Yes.
embracing roots,
Yes.
and not, I think at some point we even see voodoo being used,
Yeah.
or like, roots,
Hmm.
root practices,
Hmm.
and it not being demonized, and actually it coming back to help them,
Yeah.
and acknowledging that, ancestral knowledge,
Yes.
that was so,
Yes.
useful, and that we shouldn't, throw that away. I think even within the film, you see, some cynicism towards, like, it actually sort of challenges that mindset. Some of the characters are a bit dubious of, I think it's Annie. I think Annie is her name. Yeah, of Annie's, use of, like, roots, magic, and voodoo, and it sort of like acknowledges, that stigma, and then like turns it around and actually says, you know what, actually, we can't lose that ancestral knowledge. We need to continue to treasure it because it's part of it's part of us. It's part of our culture. It's part of our ancestry. So
I love that. I love that point that you brought out of, the skepticism towards Annie and those root practices, because that was exactly right. For people who've watched Sinners, would know that, and apologies if they're spoilers, but I mean, at this point, if you haven't watched the film, I'm not
what
really,
you doing?
I'm not sure what you are
Where
doing.
you at?
I don't know
You been
what's
in a
going
coma?
on.
What's going on?
What's happening? What's happening? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with you. So you need
And
to
if you
fix
haven't in a
it.
coma, I'm so sorry. I hope
Sorry
you're
about that.
doing well.
I hope you're all right. Yeah, I hope you're all right. But, I love that point you made about Annie because it was so true. Like, everyone was like just taking it like, oh my God, she's come again, like with all her, you know, almost like a mumbo jumbo kind of thing. That's how the
Yeah,
approach was. But she was the one that was the key. She was the key, brought that knowledge, unlocked that knowledge that helped them to be able to eventually, defeat, those evil forces
exactly.
that the protagonists were up against. And, I, watching Sinners as a podcaster, with this mythology podcast which we started a few years ago, and as a filmmaker myself, I really felt this film personally. um
Hmm.
and just like you said, it really was in its own way like a mythology retelling, but with a kind of similar strong overarching theme, as you mentioned, the value of those reconnecting with those ancestral practices and not losing that knowledge. It was very rooted in African myths as a way of telling stories. And I think that's what really helped me, and
Mm,
several people really connect with what Ryan did here. And
100%.
yeah, and even moving away from even of the mythology aspect, obviously that's the reason why we're here. But it's very hard to describe the themes that or the genre that Sinners kind of fits into. Like, is it horror? Is it drama? Is it musical? Is it period
It's
piece?
everything.
It's everything. But what isn't difficult to describe, just like you said, are those multitudes of references to African myths and legends across several pantheons and cultures, which are really woven throughout the film.
Mm,
And one of the strongest influences, one of the biggest influences, there are many big influences, but one of them would be the kind of draws from the Yoruba tradition of the Ibeji,
mm,
which is what we're hoping to discuss and share with you all
yep.
today.
Yep. So yeah, we'll just be focusing on that aspect today, but we're also planning to go into, because there's literally so
There's too
much in this
much.
film.
There's too much.
Exactly, too much. There's so
Like,
much in this film. There's so many things that I probably even missed.
mhm,
And Ryan Coogler and his big brain just wove into the movie.
Yeah.
Subtle ones, and also obviously the overtones as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we're hoping that you will enjoy this episode.
Yes, yes, yes. That's what we want and that's what we hope. And if you do love, all the things, enjoying all the stuff, please follow the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, like us. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, enjoy.
Woo!
Okay. So anybody that has followed this podcast knows our pronunciations are, it's an ongoing challenge. So please, we are asking for forgiveness in advance, for what will very, 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 very almost certainly be several mispronunciations throughout this episode. We're
Yep,
trying to be better. We will be better by the grace of God. But yeah,
yep.
just yeah, you just have to take it like that. All right. Okay. Okay. So the Ibeji is the name of an Orisha representing a pair of divine twins in the Yoruba religion of the Yoruba people, so the Ifa religion. And these divine siblings are believed to be the children of the revered Orishas, Elegua, also called Eshu, the trickster and Risha of the crossroads, who obviously we discussed in our one of our earlier episodes, African tricksters. Check it out if you're interested. Ogun, the Orisha, the god of iron and war, who we discussed in our most recent episode covering Castlevania and Annette's connection with him. And Yemaya, the goddess of the ocean, the mother of the sea, who we also have covered in our episode of African called African Mermaids. You can revisit that also for more detail. And the Ibeji embody a sacred bond between siblings and the power of fertility. So just kind of seeing that, that intro, these two twin siblings being the children of three, not two, three different orishas. That was quite interesting because
Mm,
obviously, human conception, all it tends to be just two people involved. So it's quite interesting that it
yeah,
was three. I don't know what are your thoughts on that? Because when I saw that, I was like, oh my god.
I would say I will talk more about this, but it is initially I would think it was, not strange. Strange is the wrong word, but unique.
Yeah,
But actually, it's not as unique as you might think.
yeah.
I'll leave it at that,
Ooh,
and
I
then
like
talk
that.
more about that later.
Okay, alrighty. So moving on. So in Yoruba culture, twins are believed to be magical. They're protected by the Orisha Shango, and if one twin should die, it tends to represent misfortune for both the parents and the wider community. The parents then commission like a babalawo to carve a wooden ibeji that represents the deceased twins, and they actually take care of the figure as if it was a real person. And
Mm,
even though these wooden statues represent dead children, they are not really spoken of as dead. Instead, they're said to have traveled or gone to the market. And the appearance of these statues really depends on the sculptor. But the parents are expected to dress and decorate the figure to reflect kind of their own personalities and with things like cowrie shells, beads, and coins, and things like that. So, though two children are born, they are part of the same God. And put in another way, they kind of share one soul across two bodies. And we saw this reflected in Sinners when Stack kind of became a vampire. Smoke was never the same. A part of him died as well. And
mm,
across cultures, twins have been seen as possessing this incredible, almost mystical bond, which really kind of, ties into this perception of in Yoruba culture and about twins being so really magical and twins being almost otherworldly.
mm,
So just to kind of give you a bit of context, so Smoke and Stack are were played by MBJ, Michael B. Jordan, and they are basically Sinners was basically set in the 1930s, and these are twins that the twins were kind of involved in some, you know, slightly illegal dealings in Chicago in the 30s, and they made some money from that, and then they came back to the South to open up a juke joint for the local kind of community. So they're kind of like the protagonist of the story, and yeah, so these twins kind of, to me, they represent the Ibeji as well, and even from very early, you can kind of see that there's something about them. They stand out. They have this, you know, magical, mystical quality to them as well.
Yeah.
There's also a myth about Yemaya, who, you know, is the kind of mother of the ocean, and her twins, the Ibeji. So it's said that she experienced the joy of motherhood when she brought forth two precious twins into the world, but fate struck cruelly. One of the twins tragically passed away in infancy. She was obviously ridden with grief, and was incredibly sad about this. But despite this pain, she remained very, you know, determined, and she still, you know, was driven by unconditional devotion for her surviving child, and decided to embark on this divine act of creation. And that's the belief from where this practice of, you know, carving that wooden replica of the lost twin came from, you know, Yemaya and her own loss. With her own hands, she carved a wooden replica of the lost twin, and in that sacred moment, the child came to life, becoming a tangible embodiment of the departed spirit. Thus, the Ibeji twins came into existence, forever etched into Yoruba mythology. So that story kind of resonates with the truth that, you know, our loved ones, though no longer physically present, they continue to live on with the memory, through the memory and enduring connections that we share. And it also honors us to celebrate people that have close to us that have passed, and acknowledge their continued presence in our lives. So we saw that in Sinners. When Smoke died, his spirit and his memory lived on. Not only for not only him, I mean also Annie as well. When she died as well, her spirit also lived on. And after his death, Smoke was reunited with Annie, and their daughter as well. Um, so that kind of thread of kind of acknowledging your ancestors, and you know, those connections that persist even when we depart from this natural world. So yeah, the tale of the Ibeji, to me, it not only kind of, you know, had that really, you know, key aspect of honoring, you know, our departed loved ones, but also it highlights the power of a mother's love. Yemaya's devotion showed that resilience and affection that tends to define, you know, motherly bonds. And that act of, you know, creating the surrogate child also demonstrated how far a mother would go to
Mhm.
protect and care for her children, you know, even in heartbreak. And this echoed as well in Sinners. Annie, so Annie is like Smoke's wife, so one of the twins' wife, and she was very firstly protective of him. And actually, when Smoke and Stack were, you know, over in Chicago doing their, you know, interesting practices, she was kind of praying and continuously doing root practices to protect them. And she believes that her practices, her hoodoo practices, you know, they kept the twins safe. Smoke actually had doubt about the rituals, which we kind of mentioned at the start of this episode,
Yeah.
because they didn't prevent, unfortunately, that didn't prevent the death of their infant daughter. But it was really interesting because, you know, in this way, Annie almost reflects like Yemaya. They're both women who lost children but continue to embody that love, protection, and strength. And we hope to explore Annie and this parallel in more detail in our next episode.
Yeah.
I'm keen to just get your thoughts regarding all of this.
I think we even saw that. I mean, maybe in two different ways. So I think with Annie, it was a more constructive way, but I think we then saw So another side of motherhood, also with I can't remember the name of that Asian lady.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's
Um,
true. The shop owner.
the shop owner. I can't remember her
Yes.
name now.
Yeah.
But yeah, how she, you know, y- took very drastic measures to, try to protect her
Her
child.
daughter. Yeah.
And yeah, even, well, I think a lot of people probably had very mixed feelings about about that scene
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
movie. It,
that was a point of
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it just speaks to the strength of that bond and the the resilience of the maternal bond and really how far a mother will go to protect and care for their children, even in fear, even in heartbreak, even in difficult times. And a lot of people personally, I've had that experience. I'm sure you've had that as well,
Mm,
and Ryan really, that choice that he made to depict that, it's really interesting and uh definitely thought provoking.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so in the Yoruba tradition, the the Ibeji twins hold a special place of reverence. So they remind yeah, just to remind you guys, so myself and Lade we're both Yoruba. So that's why we're saying us. We're not just,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're not just saying us, us,
we're
us,
not
us,
just
us.
saying us,
We're not
us,
just
us.
inserting
We're
ourselves
not
into
just
this.
saying us. I just inserting ourselves. So there is some connection there, even though it doesn't sound like it. And yeah, what it is, what it is. They remind us of the sanctity of family, the enduring presence of loved ones, and the power of maternal devotion. So their story offers, kind of solace and inspiration and that spiritual connection to the cycles that we encounter in life, love, loss, all of that. The retelling of the myth of the Ibeji, I would say in a way that's a very, very core part of the sinner's story. And later in this episode, what I'm going to do is just go through a few kind of myths and legends tied to the Ibeji, and that maybe you can be convinced that that is true as
Yeah.
well. So the Ibeji twins represent twins, obviously, duality, joy, mischief, and abundance. Children, they also represent children as well. They embody joy, the youth, and the nurturing spirits of siblinghood. They offer guidance, blessings, and protection. Families pray to them for children's health and well being, asking the twins to safeguard their little ones and ensure prosperity in the Yoruba culture. So, beyond children, they're also kind of patrons of sibling harmony, invoked to heal relationships and encourage unity and empathy among siblings. They are guardians of the family unit itself, protectors of peace and happiness within the home. And the worship of the Ibeji is thought to nourish communal well-being, spiritual harmony, and resilience. And I feel like Smoke and Stack, the twins in Sinners, embody this. Like I said, they created this juke joint as a way to have a space that was
Mm,
filled with joy and safety for the black community. They wanted to turn that gangster money from Chicago into something life giving for their people,
mm,
something that really brought the community together. And that really is, at the core what the Ibejis do. They're patrons of that communal well-being, that spiritual harmony and resilience. And we saw in those brief moments when the juke joint was operational that we saw the joy and we saw the release that the people in the community felt, and that was unlocked by what the twins were able to offer the community. It was almost a gift that they gave to the community because actually they couldn't even pay. In many of the patrons that first night they could not pay, and they realized, oh, it's not going to be profitable. But actually, it seemed like to them, Smoke and Stack, that wanting to build something for their community, that wanting to build something for their people was like the most important, more
yeah.
important than the risks of obviously having a black owned business in that time period. They knew people will be coming for them, the evil forces will be coming for them. They knew they'll face up a lot of obstacles, but for them it was worth it. So yeah, I found that really, really cool and very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Think you can. I think yeah. In some parts of the myth, you can see that you know twins in Yoruba culture is yeah exactly seen as like very divine and bring a lot of prosperity, wealth
Mhm.
to their community. And you can definitely see that with um Smoke and Stack. How wherever they seem to go, they seem to just you know come into a lot of luck, a lot of wealth, and also enrich people as well. Uh,
That's such a good point because yeah, they they really were in terms of their drip, in terms of their resources, they were doing well for themselves. So yeah, you're quite right. So yeah, so those onto those myths that I kind of teased a little bit, that kind of uncover some of the common folklore that surrounds the Ibeji twins. So the first one kind of follows the Ibeji twins and Elegua or Eshu, the trickster, who also happens to be maybe their father
yeah,
based on
we won't
debate.
we won't we won't dig too deep into that.
I'm not. See, this is the vibes aspect of the podcast. You said we're going to try. We said we will try. But in terms of, we'll do our best. Okay, let's just continue. So one day, the twins encountered Elegua, who challenged them with a bunch of riddles and tricks. That's his thing. Surprisingly, they solved them all with wisdom beyond their years, humbling the trickster. From then on, they were known throughout Yoruba land as clever and resilient, reminding all that strength exists even in the young. So again, this was echoes in Sinners. If you could see the vampires as representative of Eshu and maybe the crossroads, Eshu as well as being an African trickster, it's also kind of the Orisha of the crossroads, and kind of, it's like a guardian to people navigating their destiny, their fate, self-discovery, all of that. So if you can see the crossroads as the barrier between life and death, kind of in the juke joint, that
Mm,
boundary that the vampires wanted to cross in by asking the people within the juke joint to invite them in. If you can see it like that, then we could maybe see those parallels more clearly. So when Remick, the lead vampire, offers money and music in exchange for entry, Smoke kind of refused that. He saw through his intentions, and which kind of shows that wisdom, and that resilience. And even Stark initially did as well. Um, I think what got Stark was when they got, someone that he really loved, and then that
mm.
now, that kind of lured him and deceived him. But actually, initially, they were very perceptive, to see that, something wasn't right with those vampires. So, yeah. Another legend that tells a tale of the twins defeating enemies and spirits is like the Ibeji twins and the healing waters. So the twins discovered a hidden sacred pool with miraculous healing waters. They use this water to selflessly heal the sick, becoming known as miracle workers. And their legacy to that is compassion, showing how kindness transformed communities. So when I kind of went over that myth, I felt like it really mirrored the ending in Sinners, where the sun comes up and the vampires are trapped in the water, trapped there, and they kind of disintegrate with the exposure to the sun.
Mm.
And Smoke used kind of strategy, and he was also very resilient in drawing them out, and that kind of was a key thing that he used to defeat them. He did that not just for himself, but he did that for his community, he did that for his family. He did that he there was a bigger kind of, it almost felt like it was bigger than him. It was bigger than survival. It was something more kind of generation reverberating, something bigger, than
Yeah.
just wanting to survive. um And yeah, so those are basically the myths that I kind of encountered following the Ibeji twins. And in both of those, you can tell they're given different obstacles and they kind of are able to overcome them through their strategy, through their wit, through their intelligence. And
Yeah.
that's basically at the core, that was it. Smoke Stack were giving, they had several obstacles. They had, the racist that they had to kind of come up against. They had, the vampires as well. So multiple obstacles, and somehow Smoke was able to kind of overcome all of that.
Yeah. They definitely had, multiple obstacles. So I mean, we don't even know how many obstacles they faced. I think when they were in Chicago,
Yeah.
um, and to overcome that, and then come here, and there were seemed to be so many obstacles. Even yeah, just making the juke joint, having the resources, try having to like source, different aspects of the that would make the juke joint complete, the food, drinks, entertainment, everything, and they were able to surmount that, um, and very very skillfully as well. And yeah, there's also, parts of the Yoruba mythology that say that, Ibeji twins, like there is, you know, if you don't honor them, or if, you come against them, that can also bring misfortune to that person. And we see that at the end, those, owners of obviously the vampires themselves, and also those, the original owners of the juke joints, their fate at the end of it. And in a way, actually, Smoke and Stack ended up coming out on top of it all. Smoke got reunited with Annie and their child, and Stack, was still able to live on, um, with his love as well. So yeah, you can see those themes throughout. Um, and then just sort of going into more of the, sinners references, and actually looking into more why, Ryan Coogler went with this direction as
Hmm.
well with the
Hmm.
twins.
Hmm.
Um, so obviously, twins, the same two sides of the same coin. You can see there, like you already mentioned, they're very, um uh their duality, and a
Hmm.
very strong connection with each other. But ultimately, the fact that they had, red and blue hats, I didn't really understand initially the, significance of that. I knew there was some significance, but didn't
Hmm.
really understand it. But actually, I think Smoke wore the blue hat and Stark wore the red hat. If I'm correct, and I think I was watching this. I'll put the reference on because it's not. This is not my original thoughts. This is their original thoughts. Watching this interview, with this person that was analyzing it, and actually you can see Smoke and Stark went on two different paths. So
Hmm.
Smoke seemed to go on a journey of like healing. So he was the one that, was going to source the nourishment. He went to Annie to help with the food aspect of things. And obviously reconnecting with her as well, reconnecting
Hmm.
with his ancestry, and obviously his child, as well. So it seemed, I think that was basically the only thing that he did. And with Stack, it was sort of following, sort of a more worldly path, getting the
Yeah.
drinks, getting the, the entertainment, and yeah, obviously also encountering, I can't remember her name now, Haley Steinfeld's character. And also he seemed to be the one encouraging,
Hmm.
the main character, which, oh God, I'm really bad with names. What's the name of the main character again?
Oh, Sammy.
Yes, Sammy,
Okay.
to pursue the music, and
Yeah.
he's even one that led
Yeah.
him to that
Yeah.
married woman as
Yes.
well. So I thought that was really interesting that they're different parts, and obviously Stark
Hmm.
ending up, spoiler alert, as a vampire in the
Yep.
end as well.
Yep.
So one was a path of like restoration and
Yeah.
reconnection with ancestry, and the other was sort of diverting the other way, away from your roots, away from your ancestry. So yeah, so that was just a very interesting uh discovery. um
Awesome.
and Ryan Coogler looking into why he chose twins. Obviously, yeah, inspired by the Ibeji deities, and obviously this is set, like I said, in the 1930s, but that was still um this slavery era.
Hmm.
And how a lot of slaves connect, it's basically a nod to the fact that a lot of slaves were brought from West Africa,
Yeah.
and tying that together and honoring that
Hmm.
connection. I think that connection is honored, yeah, throughout the film as well. And
Hmm.
interestingly, he also says that he has a lot of twins in his family, as well, which
Hmm.
also further inspired the choice.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that
Very
that was
cool.
that was interesting. And even more interestingly, how many times have I used the word interesting now? 5 times. Even more interestingly, um, Nigeria is basically like the twin center of the world.
Oh yeah.
And
Highest
yeah,
twin birth rate.
highest twin birth rates in the world, specifically, the Yoruba regions. Um, and this is from my great pal Wikipedia.
Oh yeah.
So the Yoruba people have the highest rates of twinning in the world at 45 to 50 twin sets,
Oh
and
my gosh.
90 to 100 twins per 1,000 live births.
Oh my
It's a
gosh.
crazy stat.
That's
Um,
a lot of
yeah.
twins.
Compared to, other parts of the world, in South America, Southeast Asia, there's 6 to 9 twin sets per 1,000 live births. And
Mhm.
in North America, there's 9 to 16 twin sets per 1,000 live births. So it's like a crazy difference. Yeah. And they sort of attribute it to, potentially, they don't know, but the one thing about Yoruba people, we love yam. We love yam. We love a yam. We can eat yam in different forms: amala, pounded yam, just the yam itself. Just yam. We love yam. We can talk to yam. Um, and they saw that it contains like a natural phytoestrogen, which may stimulate the ovaries to release an egg from each side. And that is thought to contribute to why there's so many twins in in the Yoruba region. And actually looking at, that's probably contributing to why it's so revered as well, because if there's so many of this thing happening in one region, you might think, oh my god, we're blessed, or we're special if this is something that yeah. um and actually, from looking at the previous, the sort of some very old papers, like I was like, wow, this has been studied for a long time now. um it's actually been more of a recent, well, recent as in like probably past like century or a few centuries, recent shifts, that it's been looked at more positively. Before, in the past, in long, very distant past, it was actually not as revered as it is now. It's more villainized, but there was, thankfully, a shift in that, um in that perception, and now it almost seems to be, revered, held in very high, regard, um in the with the Yoruba people. So looking at sort of other sort of continents and how it was actually very hard. I think Ryan Coogler is probably, the most popular form of media that has covered the Ibeji twins, which is quite surprising actually when I was looking. So I couldn't really find um I mean there was like obviously indie movies, Nigerian indie movies, that, depicted that um that the Ibeji twins. But apart from that, it's not something that actually has been very explored in a lot of media. But just looking at, twins in general and in other forms of mythology. So just going to speak about how, you were talking about the parentage of the original Ibeji and how there were three parents, and how initially that would be surprising to me, but actually, because of what I've read, um, it's not as surprising to me because in Greek mythology, there are actually twins who have the same story, but maybe slightly different. So there are three parents involved. The popular ones called Castor and Pollux, where um, basically Castor is human and Pollux is immortal. And Pollux is thought to be the son of Zeus. And their mother was like a mortal being who was seduced by Zeus, but I think also had like a partner herself. Um,
Okay.
so the twins are thought to be, one is the son of Zeus and one is just a mortal being. And actually, I think this was inspired. Well, this is what inspired. It's like a show I've watched recently. I'm not sure if you've seen it on Netflix, called Blood of Zeus.
Okay.
So it's like an anime
I've heard
type,
of it.
yeah,
I've heard of it.
anime style series, and actually the
Hmm.
main characters, Zeus. God, Zeus is always up to things. Zeus,
He's always doing
he's
something,
always doing
man.
things. Always doing things.
Zeus is always doing something.
So Zeus basically pretended or assumes the form of their mother's
Hmm.
husband,
Okay.
um, and from that, their mom was pregnant with twins, and one of the twins there as well is son of Zeus, and the other is a mortal being.
Mm.
So also, yeah, very similar to, not similar in terms of like one is mortal and one is immortal, but similar to how there are three parents involved
Yeah.
in, like with the Ibeji
Yes.
twins as well. So yeah, that's like an interesting parallel that it seems like even across the world, this is something that was
Oh my god. Yeah.
carried on. And there's twins are, I think there's just like sort of, it's very much regarded as like a mystical thing wherever in different aspects of mythology. Some looking at it in a good way, and some looking at it in a not so good way. But yeah, also
Yep.
in Norse, Hindu, Native American cultures,
Hmm.
twins are represented in mythology in
Mm.
those, yeah, so many cultures around the world. And some it's bringing misfortune or thought of
Yeah.
as like evil, and others it's sort of referred, and it's very mixed. There's no sort of rhyme or reason with how there. I think humans just acknowledge that this is an extraordinary thing for you to have, for people to have twins, and re- they can either sort of go one way or the other with the interpretation.
They really can. They really can. That is really, really, yeah, really, really interesting. And yeah, completely agree. We tend to see that magical theme and that magical myth around, twins across so many different cultures. Aside from media, twins being represented, the Ibeji represented in in media. The Ibeji figures that I kind of mentioned earlier that were um, carved out, particularly when one of the twins was lost. They are actually very much admired by art collectors, and actually, the largest collection of the Ibeji figures actually is in the British Museum, which I found an interesting fact
Hmm.
because, yep, because it kind of took me back to Black Panther. You know, the opening scene in the London Museum where Killmonger kind of, he took back some African artifacts, or at least he kind of shaded them for having all those artifacts. And
Also,
that
Michael B.
moment,
Jordan.
yeah, exactly, exactly. That moment felt like a foreshadowing, and almost maybe a bit of a, just a little bit of a teaser, and maybe it sparked Kugler's interest in reclaiming African myth and weaving it into cinema and going, deeper into all those awesome legends and folklore. I mean, there was a lot of that in Black Panther as well, but yeah, that particular scene I found very very interesting. And in Yoruba tradition, the firstborn twin is called Taiwo, and the second one is called Kendi. And the one born second, interestingly, is called considered the elder because it's thought that Taiwo is sent ahead to test the world before Kendi enters. As much as twins being seen to bring prosperity, but maybe if you kind of go against that, or there are different things that can happen that may cause the opposite to be what happens.
Hmm.
The children born after twins are called Idowu, and they're believed to be stubborn and unpredictable. And
Ah.
superstition says that yep, if a mother does not eventually give birth to an Idowu, she may go mad.
Ah.
The restless Idowu is a spirit flying into her head. So that was just an interesting,
Oh,
tidbit.
okay.
Yeah,
Sorry
that's
to that
that.
mother.
Sorry to that mother. So like you said, twins are now seen as a blessing, bringing luck and prosperity. But originally, that was not always the case. Actually, they were considered to be a bad omen, leading to infanticide. But this changed, I think, around like the 16th century, where a Yoruba queen gave birth to twins. Refusing to kill them, she sent them with her mother to settle in a new land, which became Ondo,
Oh.
modern day Ondo State here in Nigeria. From then, twin killing began to disappear amongst the Yorubas, and this was documented in Samuel Johnson's book History of the Yorubas. At first, twin killings, infanticide was very widespread, but gradually culture changed, starting from that monarch kind of ended it. Thinking of twins in Nigerian culture, for me, it also brings to mind Mary Slessor, who, any Nigerian your person or any person with Nigerian, that grew up in Nigeria, went to primary school or secondary school in Nigeria, would have heard about Mary Slessor, the Scottish missionary who helped stop twin infanticide in Cross River State. So Cross River is, another kind of part of Nigeria. It's a state in Nigeria, and it's a different region with different cultures and languages from the Yoruba people. But even in this very different culture, twins were also believed to be cursed and result of a devil's child. Actually, it was thought that maybe one of the twins was cursed and one was normal, but it's hard to tell which one. So both infants were abandoned.
Ah.
Yeah, as a result. But Mary Slessor, like, she helped stop some of this and actually adopted some of these children. However, some historians have reminded us that ending the twin killing was not necessarily just her achievement. Obviously, there were local figures, including kings and monarchs. One notable figure in the Cross River region was the King Ayo Honesty II, who played a crucial role.
I've never heard his name before. That's
Yeah, very interesting. But those Eurocentric narratives kind of tend to erase African agency, presenting Africans as passive instead of like protagonists in their own histories. There were probably contributions, significant contributions that Mary Slessor made, but there tends to be a narrative in history where the people within the culture who also made significant strides are often overlooked. So yeah, that was another interesting kind of segue um,
yeah.
in this whole thing.
And it makes me wonder just how many names have been erased from, from history, who, had a lot of contributions. And then, because all I remember is in primary school, the teacher will be like, "Who stopped the killing of twins in Calabar in this day?" And I'll just be like, "Mary Slessor." And it was just like a very like simplistic. I understand in terms of like teaching children, you don't want to get too complex as well, but I think it was just a very, very diluted,
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh,
watered down
so
um
watered down to the
interpretation.
basest level.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Um.
great.
So I think it's very important that history is very important, and how we pass on history to the next generation is very even more so important, because they're the ones that will carry it on. And there are probably still a lot of people who feel that, who still hold this as the truth, whereas there's a lot more to the story than that. I think that's even further kind of like villainize or stigmatize as like African culture and people, because it's
Yep.
not they're not they weren't trying to be evil, or they
Yep.
weren't trying to be,
Yep.
they were actually just scared.
Yeah.
Twins are, as much, imagine like, not knowing anything about, like, that we know now about genetics,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know all that information, and this just happening. um and your humans have to find ways to interpret things,
Yes.
and sometimes their interpretation is can cause harm, but it's
Yeah.
not because they're trying to, they're just scared. And you know shouldn't that shouldn't then be treated as people being, vicious, or intentionally trying to harm others. Yeah, it's just a product of fear and not knowing. And yeah, the fear of the unknown is something that we can all relate to as humans.
Yes. I kind of really love kind of that, perspective that you brought to it. Um and yeah, I there were quite a few articles just kind of advocating for, you know, more of an appraisal, more kind of deep thought by historians, indigenous historians, just trying to better understand some of these historical events, and frame them in a way that's more accurate and less exclusionary of people within those cultures who had
Mm-hmm.
impact as well. So I think yeah, just like you said, perspective is everything really. Hindsight is 2020. So yeah, very cool.
Very,
Very
very.
cool. A lot about twins. We went very twin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We went very into it.
And I mean, yeah, in just other parts of Nigeria themselves, like, it's not only in the, like, I mean, you mentioned the Calabar um region of Nigeria, but also in like other, even as recent as the mid 1990s. there were still some communities that, mainly in the southeast, um, still, having this fear, towards twins. I think there was a Nigerian missionary called Olushola Stevens, who heard of, an area where twins were like mysteriously dying, and he went over there. Initially, the villagers said that, the gods had killed them, but actually the mother
Hmm.
would not breastfeed the twins, and so they died
Oh my gosh.
naturally, unfortunately.
Oh
But,
my.
there were beliefs that the mothers who gave birth to twins had intercourse with the devil's spirits, and that's why something quote unquote unusual or natural was produced, like the twins. So I think there was also like just the pressure on, on the parents as well, how, within a society, how you're especially a small community like a village, like how you're perceived is very, important to your daily life. So,
Yep.
if you have this thing happen and suddenly everybody is turning against you, you do anything just to stay as part of the community. So yeah, that's just it. And then there were also, the in Cameroon as well. They were both sacred, similar to sort of Yoruba region, both sacred and also feared. That, they're powerful beings, but also don't cross them as well. Um, and also, yeah, in parts of Burkina Faso, twins were seen as children of spirits and to possess supernatural powers, including ability to heal or predict the future. However, this reverence is mixed with fear, as capable of both good and bad. Which, yeah, there seems to be like a lot of like duality with it, with how twins are perceived. But yeah, a lot of cultures, even in Ghana, in the Akan tribe, they're still with supernatural powers, and having spiritual connections. Um, yeah, in Central Africa, DRC, Congo, Angola, seen as intermediaries between spirit and physical worlds. Um, and you can see it all over, like in East Africa, Ethiopia. Um, yeah, some Ethiopia is more sort of stigmatized in some areas, and then other areas is a
Yeah.
blessing. So you see that sort of like, yeah, just like the duality with twins, like that duality as well with how
Yes.
they're perceived. So it's either they're seen as, it seems to be the one with either like really powerful, forces for good, or the other side where they're considered like, more of a curse to the community or to the parents. Um, and
We
yeah,
see
that
this duality and this extremes as well so much across um Yoruba mythology, African mythology, as well, and people perceiving a lot of mythological figures at two extremes. Either they're, or either it's seen as this amazing thing, or either it's like seen as this really really evil thing. Doesn't really tend to be much middle ground,
yeah.
which is quite intriguing.
So I think we can agree that, you know just like smoke and stack, twins are seen as, extraordinary, you know um uh I would say beings is the wrong word. They're just seen as extraordinary. And
Yeah.
yeah, we can see that in the movie. They were Smoke and Stack were definitely, very special individuals, very talented,
Yeah.
very powerful,
Multifaceted.
multifaceted.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, like we said, Sinners, the Ibeji twins is just one aspect of the vast mythologies covered in Sinners. So we hope to continue this kind of mini series in our next episode. But if you enjoy this episode, please, comment. You can leave a comment, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe. And yeah, just let us know more of different things you'd like us to talk about or different myths you think would be cool for us to cover. We're keen to hear from you guys.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, looking forward to our next episode. Yeah, Sinners is just the gift that keeps on giving.
It
So
really
many,
is.
so
It
many
really
things.
is. It really is. Like this episode was actually intended to be quite short, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
we are
we are still going. We are
at
still
an
going.
hour.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, in terms of African proverb of the day, do you have a proverb for us?
No.
Okay, all righty. So I found just one proverb just recently, but it doesn't say from what African country it comes from. But like many of our proverbs, it's quite interesting, to say the least. So this one goes: a mother of twin, not twins, or probably twins, probably it's a typo. A mother of a mother of twins should have impartial breasts.
And on that note,
Yeah.
we hope you guys have a great day, week,
Okay.
month.
Yeah.
There's not really much more I can say about that.
There's not much to be said, really.
Um,
But
we'll let you guys interpret that
as
however
you wish.
you would like to interpret it.
Yeah. Love and light. Love and light to you all. Have a lovely week. Bye bye.
Bye.